Good morning, everybody. My name is Jerome Sains, and I welcome you to this IBRO Global Neuroscience Horizon webinar series, which I'll have a little bit more to say in a moment. I'm a professor of neuroscience at Brown University in the United States, and I'm also the treasurer of IBRO and the associate editor-in-chief of Neuroscience, one of the two journals that's owned by IBRO. I'm very delighted to be the host and facilitator of today's webinar. So many of you who have joined us know that IBRO is the Global Association of Neuroscience Societies that was established in 1961, quite some time ago, that aims to promote and support neuroscience around the world. More than 90 international, regional, and national scientific members constitute IBRO's governing council, which together with the executive committee of IBRO and 5 regional committees that represent countries around the world address the needs and advance the work of individual scientists and research communities globally. In addition to what I just mentioned, IBRO has partnerships with like-minded scientific organizations, such as the Society for Neuroscience in the United States, the Federation of European Neuroscience Societies in Europe, and as well as other organizations to identify priorities and to help bridge gaps in knowledge, investment, and resources in the field of brain research. So now I'd like to turn to today's webinar. That in this webinar series, which is new for us, the IBRO Global Science Neuroscience Horizons, we aim to provide online opportunities that support free and open dialogue around key neuroscience topics with current relevance and impact across all world regions. These topics are developed by drawing upon the expertise and insight of IBRO's regional committees, core leadership, and membership societies. As I noted, this is the first webinar of this series, and it focuses on our society journals and how they benefit the global neuroscience community. Most of IBRO's work is made possible by the publication of our society's journals. IBRO's flagship journal, Neuroscience, which is a hybrid journal, was established in 1976 and provides well over 90% of IBRO's annual revenue. It therefore enables IBRO to support most of its activities and the administration of those activities that have a worldwide reach. Our fully open access journal, IBRO Neuroscience Reports, was established more recently in 2016 and expresses IBRO's commitment to its continuous development as an organization, as well as to open access publication and research. Now I'd like to turn to the introduction of the speakers, and it's my pleasure to introduce all of them for today's webinar. We will go into more detail about the journals, their value and benefits. We'll hear first from Juan Lerma, the editor-in-chief of Neuroscience and professor at the Neuroscience Institute in the University of Alicante, Spain. Miguel Hernandez, if I have that right. Juan. He was also a former chair of IBRO's Pan-European Regional Committee and also served as the Secretary General of the Federation of European Neuroscience Societies, and he currently serves on the Council for the US-based Society for Neuroscience. Dr. Angie Sullis, currently a postdoctoral fellow at Johns Hopkins University, who works with Cindy Moss, who, by the way, received her PhD from Brown many years ago. Angie will soon be an assistant professor at the University of Illinois, Chicago, so we should congratulate her for transitioning to a faculty role. She's an IBRO alumna from Argentina and has published over a dozen scientific papers, including the first author of 2 articles in IBRO's flagship journal, Neuroscience. We will then turn to Y.S. Chan, the editor-in-chief of IBRO Neuroscience Reports, and professor and director of the Neuroscience Research Center at Hong Kong University, China. He was also a former chair of IBRO's Asia-Pacific Regional Committee. And last, but certainly not least, James Olopade, professor of neuroscience and comparative anatomy at the University of Ibadan in Nigeria. He also, like Angie, is an IBRO alumnus, former IBRO Africa Regional Committee member, and guest editor recently of the IBRO Neuroscience Reports special on African neuroscience. Just an administrative note here. There will be a question and answer period for all speakers after they have made their presentations. Please use the Q&A box to make sure your questions have a chance to be answered. For any technical issues, please use the webinar chat. Thank you all for coming today. And now I would like to invite our first speaker, Professor Juan Lerma, Editor-in-Chief of Neuroscience, to begin his presentation. Juan, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Jerome. Let's see if I can just share this slide. Okay. So thanks very much, Jerome, for this nice introduction, and thank you everybody for attending this first webinar on global neuroscience horizons. So I would like just to quickly introduce neuroscience, that, as Jerome said, is the flagship journal of IBRO. And obviously, we have to start saying what IBRO does. And obviously, I mean, Jerome said already, so IBRO is supporting a number of activities across the world. Some of them are exemplified here on, for instance, is supporting IBRO schools, supporting mobility training programs, is providing fellowships for people returning home, and also is supporting this large training program, which is called CAHAL program, and is run in Europe in conjunction with FENS and other institutions, but is open to world neuroscience. So IBRO is also organizing every 4 years a World Congress. The last one was in Daegu in Korea, and the next one I'm happy to announce that it will be in Granada, in my country, in 2023. So, and everybody are welcome to attend this meeting. But obviously this, as also Jerome pointed out, needs resources, and all the activities most of the activities by IBRO requires money. And this money is coming from the revenues originated by the IBRO journals, particularly neuroscience. And through this source of resources, so IBRO is able to participate with Society for Neuroscience, FENS, and other national societies in supporting world neuroscience. So the money that IBRO is doing with neuroscience is invested back in global neuroscience for all these programs. So neuroscience is a journal, it's an international journal, which is able to accept papers describing results in the specific area of neuroscience, so brain research. Any report having significant new findings are susceptible to be published. And we have a number of sections just as a guide of the kind of papers we are publishing or we published, but we, a few years ago, we removed sections because we think that neuroscience is global. Neuroscience is a kind of continuous, and it's difficult to separate, now papers in all these we call sections. But just as an orientative, this is the type of papers that we are accepting, from the molecular aspects of neuroscientific problems to innovative approaches of theoretical papers, across going through systems neuroscience, pain, etc., sensory neuroscience. So this is important to say that we do not require a submission fee, and publishing in neuroscience is totally free. There is no cost to publish, no cost for pages or figures, except if you want color figures be printed in the print version. But if you want color figures in the online version, this is totally free. We do not reject papers on basis of sexiness or whether the paper is going to have a big impact or not. And we obviously, as also Jerome said, we are a hybrid journal admitting also open access articles. So we have a large editorial board. So in addition to the two main editors, we have 17 senior editor or section editors that are, across countries across the world, from China to United States, France, Spain, etc., etc. They are active scientists. They are running their labs, so they are experts in the field of research that they obviously are working. And for that reason, they are just selected as senior editors. And this is because neuroscience is run for scientists by scientists. And this sentence belongs to the foundational editorial back in 1976, 45 years ago. So a typical paper, when this is received, this goes to the journal main, to the main editors that screen the journal. This takes 1 or 2 days. So this is just based on real data. And once the papers are screened by the main editors, about half of the papers are rejected on editorial grounds because they are out of the scope of the journal, the quality is not enough, they are very bad written, or they do not have any original information. So this is about 50%. And this takes about 2 days, which is in benefit of the authors, because we do not delay too much making these decisions. The other half of the paper received goes to a section or a senior editor that study the paper, and he or she could decide that this paper is not worth, because they are more expert than we are at the main office. But if they decide to send it to reviewers, this is what you could check just in the web page that is under review. And after 14 or 15 days, the section editor receive the inputs from the reviewers and make an assessment to the main editors that they decide, or we decide, what to do with these submissions. And about half of the papers being reviewed are rejected with no resubmissions allowed, or rejected with a resubmission allowed. So that means that we want to see these papers highly and thoroughly modified or revised, and we will submit the paper to the reviewers again. So the other half of the reviewed papers are, part of them are accepted with no revision required, and I must say that this is totally unusual. Most papers are just subjected, or we request the authors to make major or minor revisions. After then, we will review again the paper, and finally we make a decision that could be reject or could be just accept. So, but this is a scheme that is followed by many journals, particularly those associated to societies, and they are putting the peer review, is placing the reviewer, the authors, at the heart of the scientific publishing. And we can say that without peer review, and this is very important for young people that sometimes believe that the peer review is just to reject the paper. No, it's just the reason for peer reviewing the paper is just to control the scientific communication and try to improve the papers that we are publishing. So the role actually of our role is just to publish paper, not to reject papers. And this brings me to another issue, is the search of predatory open access journals in neuroscience and neurology. This is a paper that we published a few years ago that was just claiming the number of these predatory open access journals, which are not revising the papers or reviewing the papers. They are just publishing the papers because you are paid for it. And as you see, they have very nice names. For instance, American Journal of Neuroscience sounds very good, or Current Neurobiology, Archives of Neuroscience, etc., etc. But this is very worrisome, because in a few years, they went from 18 to almost 700 in 4 years. And now I think there is a calculation that there may be 30,000 predatory journals working in the world. And in the particular area of neuroscience and neurology, there are many, as you see, more than 1,000 in 2016. And essentially, they are capturing a significant number of papers, more than 3,000 papers published in the area of neurology in this year, in 2017 or 2016, which means a particular or a significant number of papers being published in this predatory journal. So be careful with this issue. We have published, this is just the collection of covers of the issues that we published in 2020, 28 issues that you can see here. Just let me point out or remark that we are publishing special issues with guest editors about specific topics. We also published kind of collection series that is a kind of virtual special issue on papers that have been already published in neuroscience on a specific target, on a specific topic. This is the topic of this first issue was about oxytocin, and if you can read it, it's very nice. And also we started last year to publish special issues honoring great scientists that passed away recently, and these are the example of the 3 first, honoring Ricardo Miledi, Tom Jessel, or Masao Ito. And there are more to come along 2021 and likely 2022. So we are one of the major journals in the field. We are in the top 10 of journals in the area of neuroscience, publishing more paper. This is data from 2019. We published almost 600. Last year in 2022, we published more than 600. So where are the papers coming from? The papers that we published, you can see that most papers published are coming from the United States and also from the area of Europe. So taking together Italy, Germany, and other European countries, the number of papers is about the same as published from the United States. But other significant part of the papers are coming from Asia and Pacific, particularly from China and from Japan. We publish, most of our papers are research papers, are articles, but some papers are review, 2 types of reviews, front reviews or just normal reviews, and a few ones are commentaries or editorial material in which we comment on papers being published being published in neuroscience. Just to finish, Tasia asked me just to give you a glimpse of what we expect of how to make manuscript stronger. And just this is a long, could be a long seminar because there are many tricks and many tips just to advise. But I would say that before writing a manuscript, before sending a paper to submitting a paper to a journal, what you have to think is if you have something new to convey to the community, something original, something to be added to the knowledge. And then you have then to clearly express your message in such a way, being organized in a logic manner, in such a way that you can, or the reader can arrive to the same conclusions that you arrive. And obviously, this will, facilitate the understanding by referees, by editors, and obviously by readers. And the general message is that more effort you put into your manuscript at the beginning, the more likely is going to be accepted. So just to say, to thank you, all people publishing or submitting papers to neuroscience. And the last message is you can support your community by publishing in society journals. So thank you very much.
So thank you very much for that, Juan, for that excellent presentation. There's a question in the Q&A. I'll just read it for you. So for maybe everyone doesn't see, this comes from Africa. And what is your opinion on the observed low submissions from Africa? And what would be your recommendation to perhaps address the perceived low submissions from Africa?
Okay, so we have submissions for Africa, but unfortunately, many submissions are still below the threshold of quality that neuroscience has. We always try to help our authors because the role of neuroscience is to help our community to disseminate their results. But obviously, we cannot override our rules, and the papers coming from Africa should improve the quality. It depends on what area of Africa, but we receive few papers from Africa, and many of the papers that we receive are, as I say, low quality. So, but I think we are experiencing an increase across the years in papers received from Africa and from many other countries, also from Asia and Pacific, and they are improving. For instance, we receive a significant number of papers coming from Iran. And if you check the impact that these papers have, those papers being accepted in neuroscience, the papers are having a significant number of citations. So meaning that the quality of this research is quite good. So we hope, just to be able to accept more papers, but the general message is that the quality should increase a bit.
All right, we have a question from Chakchu Bhattari from Nepal. And I think the question is, would neuroscience consider papers that address issues with the enteric nervous system?
Yeah, well, the answer is yes, provided that the results are original, are conveying an original and significant message. So this is related to peripheral nervous system, and peripheral nervous system papers have a place in neuroscience too.
And I concur as the associate editor-in-chief. There's another question, and maybe I'll handle this one, Juan, and you'll see why in a second.
Yeah.
The question is there a scope of publishing review articles in IBRO, Neuroscience Journal? I think that's maybe directed to this journal, not IBRO Neuroscience Reports. So I handle, as the associate editor-in-chief, one of my responsibilities is to handle all review articles. And if we are very happy to see reviews on all topics and from anyone. Please do, however, take a look at the guide for authors about what an author should do in anticipation of submitting the review, which is basically to contact me with a prospectus. The details of that are in the guide for authors. Okay, thank you so much. We're running a little bit over time, so I think let's all thank Juan for his outstanding presentation, which I might add one other thing about Africa is IBRO has schools, not only in Africa, but in other parts of the world to help scientists develop their careers. And we're about to hear from one of those people, I think, that IBRO actually helped Angie Sullis's career moving forward. So she'll speak to us a little bit about that perhaps, but also about the work that she does. So our next speaker is Angie Sullis, currently at the Johns Hopkins University.
Hi, thank you. Let me share my screen briefly. Actually, let me share properly. There we go. Yeah, so thank you for that introduction. My name is Angie Sullis. I go by Angie. And today I want to tell you of the instances in which IBRO has propelled my career forward and a little bit about the research that I have published in IBRO's flagship journal, Neuroscience. So I believe that using comparative approaches for brain research and a wide array of techniques will allow us to identify commonalities and specializations of neural systems.
Angie, sorry to interrupt. I think you have to switch screens. We are seeing the speaker screen.
Oh, okay. Let me stop sharing. Huh. This is interesting. Share screen. Do you see my screen now?
Perfect. Very
Okay,
good.
great. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so during my PhD at the University of Buenos Aires in Argentina, I explored the molecular mechanisms involved in learning and memory in mice and crabs. And as a postdoc at Johns Hopkins University, I approached comparative neuroscience by studying the echolocating bat and using electrophysiological techniques to study auditory processing of natural sounds. So first I will talk about one of the projects that I worked during my PhD. So during my PhD, I studied the dynamics of the transcription factor Nfkb, which has been described as critical for learning and memory. So when activated, Nfkb translocates to the nucleus, where it binds DNA and promotes the transcription of target genes. It is found in many different species and cell types, and in neurons, Nfkb can be found at the nucleus, cytoplasm, and at the synapse. Nuclear Nfkb activation is necessary for memory consolidation, and this has been evidenced also in several species. Yet the role of synaptic Nfkb during memory consolidation had never been explored. So to explore this question, we use the inhibitory avoidance learning paradigm that uses the mind's natural behavior. So we place animals on a platform in front of a dark compartment because mice have stigmotaxis, so they want to be close to walls, and they have negative phototaxia, so they want to hide from the light. When untrained mice are placed on the platform, they walk into the dark compartment. So once inside, they received a mild foot shock, and 24 hours later, the retention is evidenced by higher latencies to step into that dark compartment. So then we extract the hippocampus of the animals, and using sequential extractions, we were able to obtain the protein content of the cell body and the nucleus, the synapses, and the synaptic membranes. And we found Nfkb, so this is the subunit P65 of Nfkb. We found it at the nucleus and cytoplasm, but also in the synaptosomal contact and strongly bound to the synaptic membranes. So we discovered that Nfkb binds to the synaptic membrane within 5 minutes post-training. But not only does the presence of the transcription factor at the membrane increases, we also found that Nfkb located at the synapse is activated 5 minutes after training, while at the nucleus, so here's at the synapse, while at the nucleus, it takes 45 minutes to be activated. So this was the first time that the dynamics of the transcription factor at the synapse during memory consolidation were described. These results were part of my first author research paper from my PhD, and we published them in Neuroscience. So our lab in Argentina had limited resources, so we were looking for a journal that was well respected scientifically and also would be within our means. So as Juan mentioned before, Neuroscience has no cost for author, and also it's a journal made by scientists and for scientists, so it's rigorous and respected. So we were actually very delighted when our work got accepted there. So in my third year as a PhD student, I applied for the Neural Systems and Behavior course at the Marine Biological Laboratory in Woods Hole. And this course I highly recommend that everybody applies to. They also have other courses that might be of interest. And it's a 2-month-long summer course where you learn about different electrophysiology techniques to explore the neural correlates of behavior and the diverse animal models that can best answer specific research questions. So for example, here's a little video of some extracellular recordings that we did on a freely moving electric fish. So being able to attend this course was facilitated by a fellowship from IBRO, and it was a pivotal point in my career. So during this course, IBRO offered me one of the first North American lab activity fellowships that would cover an internship in a lab of the US or Canada for 3 weeks, plus attending the Society for Neuroscience. So I visited Dr. Moss's lab at Johns Hopkins University and started working in auditory processing in these animals. So here you can see me for the first time holding a bat. So this internship led me to a switch in research direction. And after my PhD, I joined Dr. Moss's lab as a postdoctoral fellow to continue to study auditory processing in bats. Now, why bats, you may ask? Bats are auditory specialists that produce ultrasonic vocalizations and listen to the returning echoes to build a scene of their surroundings. And this is called echolocation. This is an active sensing system, which means the animals need to actively produce the echolocation calls to obtain sensory stimuli. So we can record and analyze the signals that the bats produce, therefore gaining full insight into the sensory information that guides the bat's behavior. They are social animals that, depending on the species, can live in roosts from a couple of individuals to several thousands. And they use their voices not only to navigate, but also to communicate with each other. And furthermore, bats are mammals whose brains share many similarities with that of humans, allowing for comparative work in auditory processing. So the ability of humans and other animals to sort acoustic signals from different sources in a dynamic environment is called the cocktail party effect. And it's called like this because the theory came about based on how people could focus their attention in one particular conversation in a noisy party while filtering out the unimportant background noise. As I mentioned before, bats are social animals and hunt in their own little cocktail parties, where not only they have to discriminate the echoes from their own vocalizations, but also attend to the communication calls emitted by their roost mates. So next, I'm going to show you a short video of what these bat cocktail parties look like. So these bats that you see are hunting for insects in close proximity to each other, and you'll be able to hear the calls that they produce through the output of a bat detector that makes them audible for human hearing. So I think that looks like a super fun party. But when hunting in these cocktail parties, it is crucial to communicate with each other and claim food to avoid collisions such as this one. So how do they communicate to claim food? One of the communication calls that big brown bats emit are named frequency modulated bats, or FMBs, as I'm going to refer to them from now on. And they signal to the competitor, stay away from my food. So here I'm showing you data of two bats represented by a red and blue dot, which are competing for this green dot, which is a food item. So you'll see and hear the blue bat emit an FMB, I'm going to point it out to you, and you'll see the red bat fly away. That's the FMB. The red bat is flying away. And there goes the blue bat for the kill. That's the terminal dust that signifies capture. What I'm showing you here is a spectrogram of the vocalizations produced by this bat. A spectrogram is a way for us to visualize the calls that the bats produce. So we can see the sound frequencies that occur over time, and the color denotes the intensity, with the greatest energy shown in yellow. As you can see in these spectrograms, these FMB social calls are very similar to the echolocation calls and overlap in acoustic features. So they have the same bandwidth and duration, but have subtle differences in sweep rate and shape. And of course, they have very different meanings. So thinking about it in human, a situation I get all the time when I'm presenting my work at conferences is that when people ask me what animal I work with, I say bat, and immediately they ask me rat. Like the bat's calls I showed you before, these two words are very similar, but have different meanings. And if you add to the mix a noisy environment like that of a huge poster session, the discrimination becomes even harder. So how do bats do it? So we recorded neural activity from the bat's inferior colliculus, which is an auditory hub in charge of the first higher order processing area for acoustic stimuli. And we found neurons that respond differentially to these vocalizations that are acoustically similar, but again, have very different behavioral relevance. So I analyzed neuronal selectivity by looking at spikes numbers to evaluate response strength. As you can see, for example, for this neuron, we can see a strong response for the FMBs, but a weak response for the echolocation calls. And for this other neuron, we see a weak response for the FMB, but a strong response for the echolocation. So we also calculated spike-triggered averages as a way to evaluate the response consistency and timing across several playbacks of the different call types. And with all this information, so as I said, the response magnitude and the timing for the different call categories, we were able to build a 6-dimensional feature space for each neuron. We embedded this into a 2D space and extracted the values across the first principal component. And we found 3 populations of neurons with differential selectivity, one selective for FMBs, one selective for echolocations, and a population that was non-selective. So this selectivity contributes to the discrimination of calls that shares acoustic features but different meaning. We concluded that there are neurons in the inferior colliculus of bats that are selective for either communication or echolocation calls, a selectivity that goes beyond frequency tuning. And this research was also published in Neuroscience as the cover article. So this research actually was launched my postdoctoral career in this slightly new field for me. So by now, nearing the end of my postdoc, I'm hoping to continue my research career in the field of auditory processing and using bats as mammalian models for research questions. I hope I have already convinced you that bats are outstanding animals to study acoustic processing of complex sounds. They're auditory specialists and very social animals that use their voices not only to navigate, but also to communicate with each other. And though much has been learned about how bats process acoustic information, most studies have focused on echolocation calls. So there is still much to learn about how they process communicative sounds. Furthermore, vocal learning has only been studied in a handful of species, here the ones marked in green, and this field of study is very recent. So now I'm transitioning to an independent position as an assistant professor, and my lab will study two main topics. First, auditory processing of social sounds. I want to delineate the key acoustic features of social calls that allow for meaning. That means I want to know, for example, what features make a territorial call a territorial call. For example, I hope you can understand the words I'm saying, even if I'm speaking them with an accent. So this means that there are some acoustic features that carry meaning, while others are specific to me. So after this first categorization, I want to investigate the cellular and molecular mechanisms and the areas that are involved in this categorization of sounds. And secondly, I want to study vocal learning in bats. This means identifying and comparing the circuits and mechanisms across bat species that are crucial for vocal learning, and use bats to bridge the knowledge in vocal learning across taxa. And I want to link this by investigating the role of auditory processing and sound categorization in vocal learning development. Working with bats can give us insights into how different animals use sound to relay social information. As mammals, they offer the perfect link to bridge the research that has been done in acoustic processing and vocal learning in mice, birds, and humans. And also, it can advance the understanding of how the mammalian auditory system works to extract relevant acoustic information and discriminate sounds in a dynamic world. So this is not only important for animals, but also for humans, especially those who rely on hearing to navigate their surroundings or whose hearing is impaired and for whom auditory discrimination of relevant sounds comes with an increased cognitive load. So with that, I want to thank both the Bat Lab at Hopkins and the Laboratory for Neural Plasticity and Memory at the University of Buenos Aires. And I also want to acknowledge our funding sources, especially IBRO, and thank you for having me here today and for your attention.
So thank you so much, Angie. This was a wonderful talk. Before we get to the Q&A, there are 3 questions. You could maybe start looking at them, Angie, though I'll announce them. I would like to point out to all of those who are listening that, and thank you, Angie, for acknowledging IBRO, there are many opportunities for young scientists as well as more established scientists to take advantage of IBRO programs, and Angie used these programs as a launching pad for her seemingly successful career. She's going to be in, I presume, a tenure track position in the University of Illinois, Chicago, which is a wonderful achievement. So we need to congratulate Angie on that.
Thank you.
IBRO could take a little bit of responsibility for that, maybe not all of it. Angie is the one who can take most responsibility for it. So please take a look at the programs. There are more than what Angie mentioned. There are myriad programs that many people will qualify for. So there are 3 questions. The first one is related to your doctoral work. And I'll just read this out for the group, for those people who are not maybe looking at the Q&A. So which genes under the control of Nfkb are responsible for memory consolidation? And then what happens to these expressions? That question disappeared, so I couldn't finish reading it. Oh. Sorry. So you can.
So there are a lot of genes that are under the expression of Nfkb, and which specifically are important for memory consolidation is actually still an open field of study. So that's something, the downstream genes of Nfkb are still being studied. One of them is CYP298, I think. But there's just a very, very long list and of some that have been described and some that are potential candidates. And I don't know what the rest of the question said.
Is what happens to these expressions and by extension memory consolidation under Nfkb controlled neuroinflammation?
Oh, sorry, I'm not seeing that one.
It's the second one down. I'll just say it
I can see it. I can see it now. Yes. What happens is it's better. Oh, that's a super interesting question. So I don't know is the answer that I can give you, but it's a super, super interesting question that I think I at least have not seen research on, but I think would be super interesting to study. Because of course, so actually a fun tidbit is that I started studying Nfkb from the neuroinflammation point. And then moved into memory consolidation because it had been described as like crucial for this. But I do think that under neuroinflammation with an overactivation of Nfkb, there could be maybe even some memory impairment. So that is a super interesting question, but I'm speculating here on the answer.
Thank you very much for that answers and for the question as well. So the next question is, there are two parts to this, not necessarily related. One harks back to your work in Buenos Aires, and then the other one is a more general question. So the first question is, have you done Nfkb estimations in bats? And then I'll ask the next question.
I have not. I've been tempted, but I have not because the questions I've been studying with the bats are a little bit different and I haven't actually gone into learning. But because I'm moving into starting to study vocal learning, I actually think that studying the role of the transcription factor during vocal learning development would be super interesting. So it would potentially be one of at least a side project for the future. But I have not studied it yet.
So thank you very much for that. So you sort of addressed this next question a little bit, but maybe you could elaborate on it, which is why use the bat for your studies? You know, so you did address that a little bit. I mean, it's a very good model system in terms of that it's a very good sensory motor model system, but perhaps you might want to speak a little more eloquently on that than I'm able to do.
Yeah, so I think you're referring to the last question that I'm seeing posted here about how if they might be a good model for study autism-related communication problems. And yes, so I think they will be, and some of the genes that I'm interested in looking at the expression of during vocal learning development are genes that have been involved or have been described to be related to the autism spectrum disorders. So for example, ROBO1, KIA 319, and of course, FOXP2. So this has not been really studied in detail yet. So I can't tell you if they will be good models for this, for specifically autism-related communication problems. But I do think that they are amazing models for just vocal communication, auditory processing, because they have this very highly developed vocal system and because they're mammals. So we can draw a lot of comparisons between our brains and their brains. And also, so there's a lot that we have learned about the neurobiology of vocal communication from birds, but the brain differences are kind of big with the mammalian brain. So having this animal where we can study and try to replicate a lot of the things that have been studied in birds will give us insights into how the mammalian brain actually does this challenge of processing acoustic information.
Good, thanks very much. There is one more question, but we're going to save that for the Q&A session because it's a very specific question. And we should move on right now. So thank you again, Angie, for your wonderful presentation and shouting out for IBRO. We appreciate that quite a bit. Our next speaker is YS Chan, whom I mentioned is serving as the editor-in-chief of IBRO Neuroscience Reports. And YS, please.
Hello, my name is YS Chen. Colleagues used to call me YS. I'm currently the editor-in-chief of IBRO Neuroscience Reports. 5 years ago, in 2016, the International Brain Research Organization decided to establish the journal IBRO Reports. Earlier this year, it was decided to change the name of IBRO Reports to IBRO Neuroscience Reports in order to enhance or to strengthen the association of readers with neuroscience. Our journal is one of the official journals of IBRO, also a sister journal of neuroscience, and our journal is published by Elsevier. IBRO Neuroscience Reports is indexed in PubMed. So far, we have published a total of 10 volumes, and we publish full-length articles, review articles, short communications, and perspectives. In the last 5 years, we have authors from over 40 countries throughout different parts of the world. Readers may ask, what are the benefits of an open access journal? We aim to open up all the articles to all readers. And by so doing, we increase the readership, we increase the download and citation, but more importantly, this will enable a greater visibility and also to allow the knowledge exchange worldwide. The scope of our journal, IBRO Neuroscience Reports, covers the following main items. First, we accept articles that reflect original research on the nervous system. We also welcome small-scale studies with potentials to lead to new insights and/or hypotheses. We welcome studies in which the methods are sound, and also replication studies. Other than the articles that I have mentioned, we also published supplementary volumes. In the past, we have published 2 volumes. The first one contains all the abstracts presented in the IBRO World Congress back in 2019. And the second one contains abstracts published in the Society of Neuroscientists in Africa conference back in 2019. We aim to publish several more of these conference abstracts in 2020 and in 2021. But because of the COVID-19, the projects have been shelved, and we anticipate to have further supplementary volumes in the coming future. Other than supplementary volumes, we also publish special issues. So far, we have published 2 special issues. The first one is entitled Emotion and Mood Disorders, and the second one is entitled Neuroscience and Lifestyle. Currently, we are having a 3rd special issue called Neuroscience in Africa and Co. And the manager guest editor, James, is going to share with us his experience in this special issue in about 15 minutes time. And at this juncture, I would like to extend my sincere invitations to the audience to come up with suggestions for topics that cover perhaps methods and protocols in neuroscience. We also would like to invite all early career neuroscientists to submit proposals either for special issues or mini-series. Last but not the least, we also would like to invite regional associations or regional organizations to discuss with us the possibility of publishing special topics under either a special issue or to create mini-series. Colleagues will ask, under IBRO Neuroscience Reports, what do the editors or reviewers look for? First, we would like to look at whether the manuscript address scientific question, and also what is the conclusion. Is the conclusion justified by the data presented in the manuscript? We also will look at the figures and tables to assess whether they are appropriate and also whether the statistics is in the right order. And then reviewers will, based on all the aforementioned aspects, will offer ideas about how to improve the manuscript and also whether ethically it is accurate. So in short, in order to publish a good paper, one has to present clear scientific question and also to attain international standards on various aspects, including ethics, image processing, specificity of the reagents used, data presentation, whether the results are reproducible, and also the way by which the statistics is being presented, including a definition of the number, standard deviation, and also offer exact p-values. Ethics is of prime importance in our journal. We look at authorship. We also look at the experimental subjects, whether it is animals or human subjects, and I have listed here reference under this topic. Last but not the least is plagiarism. And I would like to invite all the authors to look at the guidelines as being published by the Committee on Publication Ethics. At last, I would like to invite the audience to submit to IBRO Neuroscience Reports, either manuscripts, reviews, and in particular, proposals for special issue, for mini-series, and for supplementary volume. So please do send in your thoughts to me. The email address of me is indicated on the left-hand side. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, YS, for that very informative presentation. We have, I believe, just one question at the moment. And I think it's a question about review articles. Well, it is a question about review articles in terms of who can send them in. And I'll let you handle that. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone can send a review article. Review articles are welcome. At the point when I, as an editor-in-chief, receive either a review article or manuscript, I will either pass it to the associate editor or I myself will echo it and then pass to the reviewers. So all kinds of review articles are welcome, not just invited, open to all.
That's right. That is absolutely true. It's we're only if you recall the guidelines, the types of papers that IBRO Neuroscience Reports looks for. It's quite wide and quite open to a wide variety of cases. The other thing I might add, you know, since it's open access, there is an APC. Might as well have truth in advertising here. There is an APC, but it's
Yes.
relatively low, not as low as the predatory journals, but we're not a predatory journal. So it's $1,500. And we, YS, myself and others, insisted that Elsevier does not raise it for this year. We thought that it was good to keep the APC low. There are circumstances under which the APC can be waived, but that's something that you should contact Professor Chan about, and he will tell you about that.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer.
I have to watch out for the Euros so that we can run those wonderful programs. Any other questions for the editor-in-chief of IBRO Neuroscience Reports? You can post them for later during the overall Q&A. If not, let's move on to the last, but certainly not the least speaker for this webinar. It's Professor Olopade. Once again, he's a professor of neuroscience and comparative anatomy at the University of Ibadan in Nigeria. And he will be speaking about his experience with IBRO Neuroscience Reports, as well as some other aspects. James, please proceed.
Okay. Good afternoon. Well, to my part of the world. And I want to give a brief talk on IBRO as a career-enhancing organization. I'm happy to be an IBRO alumni. I went to my first IBRO school in 2004 in Grahamstown in South Africa. And some of the faculty at the school, Sharon Julinho, Raj Kalarai, remain my mentor and partners till today. So the next IBRO school I went to was in Stellenbosch, near Cape Town, in 2005. And in Stellenbosch, notably I met Janice Weeks, I met James Connor. So after the IBRO school in 2005, I guess the major progress I had was I now went to MBL, the neurobiology course in Woods Hole in 2007. And incumbent on the fellowship, that the sponsorship that took me for the neurobiology course was, I was also at the SFN in DC in 2009, 2008, 2009. So the next thing IBRO did for me was I became an IBRO research fellow to Professor James Connor's lab in Penn State College of Medicine. So I had met Professor Connor at the IBRO school in Stellenbosch, and I saw that we had similar research interests. So I was in his lab as an IBRO research fellow from 2008 to 2009. It was during that stay that I went to SFN. And in addition to that, I had an IBRO return home in 2010, 2011, 2010. So I had an IBRO return home, and that was very important in beginning the setup of my laboratory. So when you see from 2004, attending the first IBRO school, and then attending the second IBRO school, going to the neurobiology course in Woods Hole, and then SFN, becoming an IBRO research fellow, and then having the support of IBRO with the IBRO return home. So within a decade, I started building my foundation with the support of IBRO, and was actually completing the roof of my career, or building the roof. So that's been the progress of IBRO. Now, I think that IBRO developing one's career, and with time, what is expected of a developed career is for that career to also start to enhance other careers of young people And there are also provisions in IBRO. So not just for you to build your career, but for in that also to also help to develop the career of young people. So after I got the IBRO return home, I started teaching, organizing IBRO schools in Nigeria. So along with Professor Oguniyi, Dr. Rufus Akinyemi, we started at the first IBRO school in Nigeria in the late 2000s. And so far we've had numerous IBRO schools in Nigeria. I've personally been an organizer for 5 IBRO schools. And in addition, being a faculty of IBRO schools outside in other parts of Africa, in Cameroon and in Morocco. So that's been a great source of pride to me to help younger people through IBRO develop their careers. For about 6 years, I was a member of the IBRO African Regional Committee, so working with IBRO in lending support to young people across the continent in travel grants and to organize Brain Awareness Week and other programs of IBRO. I ended up myself being the president of the Society of Neuroscientists of Africa from 2017 to 2019. And needless to say that the Society of the Neuroscientists of Africa have enjoyed tremendous support from IBRO over maybe 20 years or more. So we use this opportunity to say we are grateful to IBRO. One striking thing that IBRO has done, and that's in the picture on my slide, is I trained in Penn State as an IBRO research fellow in 2008 to 2009. And 10 years later, I got an IBRO visiting scholar grant for North America, US, North America. And I went as a visiting scholar back to the lab in Penn State to give a talk on 10 years after leaving Penn State, how far has my career developed. So I think those are all great support I've enjoyed from IBRO. In 2019, as I finished my tenure as president of Society of Neuroscientists of Africa, like YS Khan has said, I was invited as a guest editor for the Supplementary IBRO Neuroscience Reports on the abstracts from the Society of Neuroscientists of Africa Conference 2019. And that was my first relationship, so to say, with IBRO Neuroscience Reports. And I want to believe it's by the kind consideration of YS Khan, I was also then invited to be a managing guest editor for a special edition of Neuroscience in Africa. And so far, we have 7 publications that have been accepted and they are already published. I want to thank IBRO for the opportunity, open access papers with waivers. Neuroscience in Africa is developing, but has made giant strides due to the support of IBRO over the last 2 to 3 decades. And the whole essence for Neuroscience in Africa Special Edition is to try to bring the best, to show the best of neuroscience in Africa to the world. So we have Africans in diaspora who are who are working in different labs abroad, professors, assistant professors, postdoc, and they are all invited to publish in this special edition, although the waiver is for those who have their labs who are working in Africa. But we've had Africans from the diaspora sending their papers, and we've had Africans on the continent sending their papers, and it is still open. So we are still accepting more manuscripts, like one for neuroscience and YS for IBRO Neuroscience Reports have said. The standards are high. We need to do our homework properly, right? Make sure methodologies are sound. Our conclusions is justified by the results obtained, good statistics. And we are glad many people have been having, great response from their publications, people contacting them for collaboration. So it gives you an elevated platform to showcase the work that you are doing on the continent. One thing I will like to end with is that when we get many of these opportunities from IBRO, travel grants, conference attendance, for those of us in Africa, it gives us great opportunities to collaborate with top scientists in the world. And my encouragement is get well trained. And for some of you who come back to the continent, continue the culture of good science. IBRO return home, equipment support. There are different platforms to have equipment on the continent to do your work, and you keep your collaboration. In addition, one way to also stand out from your research is also to delve into unique plants, unique rodents, unique animals in the African continent whose neuroscience, neuronal architectures, behavioral patterns have hardly been studied, and there's no information in the literature. A lot of great information can be generated from these animals, from plants with neuromodulatory behavior that can give great contribution to neuroscience in the world. So a lot of good things can come out from Africa, but we need to be building the blocks from good training, good exposure, continued collaboration, so that we can tap from the best on our continent and show it on the best platforms in the world. So I think that's where I want to end. Again, I want to thank IBRO. In about 15 years, I have gone from attending the first IBRO school to becoming a mentor, graduating masters and PhDs in neuroscience, now going to postdocs in top places in Europe and in the US. So IBRO indeed can be a career-enhancing organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, James, for that inspirational talk. Yes, James gave a wonderful tour of many of the programs that are available to scientists at different levels. And please do access the IBRO website, ibro.org. If you have questions, you can send them to secretariat@ibro.org. That is questions about the programs that are available. I put that email into one of the answers to the question. One person also asked questions about the journals, so I put in the emails to the of the editors-in-chief for the two journals. I might add that in addition to the wonderful things that James said, thank you so much, James, about IBRO helping out the development of neuroscience in Africa. In addition to the special issue that James is organizing, in 2017, Neuroscience published a perspective by Dr. Balogun, maybe you know him, James, and the title of that was Advancing Neuroscience Research in Africa, Invertebrate Species to the Rescue. So you might want to take a look at that. It's certainly no secret that the governments in Africa do not have many resources for many things, and especially supporting scientific research. So using invertebrate models, in addition to the very important piece that James mentioned about the unique species, that's incredibly important. But to make advances with limited budgets, invertebrates might be an interesting choice for model systems. We actually don't have any specific questions. Oh, there's a question about, do we have an IBRO school in Ghana? James, I'm going to let you answer that, and maybe the Secretariat. We actually have an answer. There will be an IBRO school during the 2021 Ghana conference in October, and there's an email there.
Yeah, that's true.
Link there. So yes, the answer to that is yes, there is. There are many schools in Africa. I can't remember the exact number, but every year, the Regional Committee of Africa, ARC, African Regional Committee of IBRO, submits proposals for 10 or so schools, and they are funded. In addition to that, there are two larger schools that were meant to happen every year, but in this pandemic, they've been postponed until the health situation improves. One is in South Africa, and the other has been in North Africa. Those are somewhat larger schools and more international. There's a question about any lecture exchange programs in IBRO. I think we're sort of going into the general questions here. Tazia, maybe you want to speak to that, if you can. Tazia Asakawa.
Hi, yes, we do have visiting lecture programs, and all of the open applications for that would be on our open grants page. And I have posted it in the chat, but I will repost that again for everybody.
So there's another question that I'm not exactly sure for PDFs. I thought that means postdoctoral fellows, I guess, not PDF documents. Got a little confused by that. So this is, again, Tazia, this is something for you. Opportunities, I'm not sure where you are, Rimpi Aurora, but I'm guessing it might be in India or Pakistan by your name, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Opportunities for postdoctoral fellowships in Canada under IBRO fellowships. The answer to that is yes, but why don't you say, Tazia, say more.
Right, we do. It's limited to students and postdocs from minority serving institutions, and those can also be found on our website. I will also post a link for you in the chat.
Yeah, so we're into general questions, but before we get into the general questions, I really want to thank all of the speakers who gave very interesting perspectives for their somewhat official roles as editor-in-chiefs of the two IBRO journals. So thank you, Juan, thank you, YS, and thank you, Angie, and thank you, James, for outstanding descriptions of your experience with IBRO and the work that you do. We hope at IBRO that, and I think the answer to that is we have had a positive impact on your careers. And I think that you showed that that is definitely true. And there are many more stories like that. We chose two people who exemplified the spirit of IBRO, of giving back. Angie, giving back. We're waiting for that from you soon. So we know James has given back. So that's the spirit of IBRO, to give and to take, but I wouldn't say take, it's giving back. So the people that we support, we want to build a worldwide neuroscience community that will build with strength so that we can improve the lives, not only of the researchers, but also within the communities that all of us live in. So with that, I'd like to thank all the speakers, and then we'll go on to more general questions. But any comments from the speakers are welcome at this point, and then we'll go to the Q&A.
Just thank you for inviting me to this panel. And yeah, if I can stress how much IBRO has helped my career just one more time, I will do so. I really recommend that people take opportunity of all the opportunities that IBRO has to offer, because as James says, it is a career enhancing organization.
Yeah, there's one other thing I mentioned about that. There's, as we can see by looking at the two people who have benefited from IBRO, you can understand that IBRO is interested in diversity, equality, and inclusion, but we're re-emphasizing that even more so with the current officers who are very concerned with that. That's Tracy Bell, the president, and Ginny Song, the Secretary General. This is going to be a major emphasis and a major concern of the leadership. Okay, so I may not get these in order. There's a question about schools in India and Nepal. We certainly have many schools in India. I think that you can look at the website of IBRO to find out the schools that are in India, and I hope that the organizers are listed. If not, we can get those to you. Let's continue to see here. The question about India is 2021. There will also schools be going on in 2021, but whether they're in person or remote is not determined for all the schools. Jonathan and Tazia, you can help me about the questions are coming, but I may be missing them because they get reordered. I think I have answered all the ones that are currently there. There's one about a research fellowship scheme of IBRO. When is the deadline for that? Tazia, you might want to mention for that.
All of our open applications will be on the open application page, and they have our deadlines listed. So right now we have IBRO meeting support and an open call for US-Canada fellowships to attend Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory and MBL courses in 2021. The meeting support is actually open to the Pan-European, Latin American, and Asia-Pacific regions at the moment.
So I think I didn't fully answer the question about schools in IBRO. So let me say something about the way many schools work. Well, first I should say there are two general comments about schools. In a sense, there are two types of schools in terms of who organizes them. There are schools that are organized by the Secretariat. These often, though not always, are schools that are run in partnership with other organizations. And the applications for those schools are directly through the Secretariat. There are other schools that are proposed by regional committees. So in the case of a school in Nepal, that would be organized by the Asia Pacific Regional Committee. And so anyone who wants to propose a school in a country that's within a region, so for example, the Asia Pacific region, which Nepal is in, the individual who's interested in having a school in a particular country would contact the chair of the regional committee for that region. So those schools tend to be local. They can tend to be distributed across the region. So I'm not saying that I have a perfect list right now, though, because it's not in front of me, though Tazia can look it up while I'm speaking. For 2021, there are certainly schools in India. I believe there's a school in Malaysia. I think there was certainly a school in 2020 in Mongolia. There may be another one in 2021. At the moment, the other ones in the Asia Pacific region escape me, but Tazia can perhaps add to my incomplete and fragmentary memory on that.
Yeah, it was almost completely correct. We have schools this year in India, Bangladesh, Singapore, Nepal, Mongolia, and that's it. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 schools. They're anticipated to run in India. Obviously, this will be determined by the COVID-19 situations in all of these countries.
Okay, right. I think we've answered all the questions. If not, can the person ask them again? Again, there are lots of specific details about IBRO on its website and about the 2 journals that we've been talking about. Please do take the opportunity to take a look at the journal website. These should be readily available. If you can't find the website, please send an email to secretariat@ibro.org or to one of us. There are emails that are in the Q&A. My email is there. I actually gave both of them, my private one and the journal one. I shared, sorry, Juan, I shared your email address as well as YS's. I didn't share yours, James and Angie's, but people can find your email if they want to contact you directly about personal experiences. Anything else? Any closing remarks from the panelists?
I'm just wanted to add that, of course, anybody who wants to contact me, I'm also on Twitter, and you can contact me through there if my email, but my email should be online too. So I'm happy to answer any questions about my specific experience with IBRO.
James, anything? Final remarks?
Well, it's been a great time. I want to just encourage people from Africa that the Neuroscience in Africa special edition is still open. I got a phone call, I think last week, someone asking, so please, it's still open. It will not be open forever. So people should please send in their manuscripts so we get working on it before YS closes the door.
YS, do you have any closing remarks? You're muted, YS.
Sorry for that. It's indeed a great experience for me to have close interaction with Angie and James in such a fashion. I think this also provides us with experience other than the IBRO alumni social gathering that we used to have for the Society for Neuroscience or IBRO Congress. I really enjoy the interaction. So thank you very much. And I shall write to Angie and James independently on the various initiatives that I do have in mind. Thank you.
And Juan, any closing remarks? You're currently muted, Juan. Good.
Well, yeah, I want to thank everybody for attending this webinar. And I would say that from our point of view as an editor of journals, our nicest or the nicest aspect of our job is just to accept papers. So when we reject a paper, we consider this a kind of fail. And believe it or not, this is for an editor is a sad thing. So our job is accept paper, and we will be happy to accept every paper with obviously with a given level of quality, and we will try to help authors to improve their papers through the peer review system as much as possible. And I mean, so IBRO is there to serve the members, and we are here to serve IBRO and the neuroscience community. And thank you for supporting neuroscience and IBRO.
Yeah, so I might, thank you for that very much, Juan. I might add one other thing. At various meetings over the scientific meetings, conferences, over the last several years, particularly Juan, but also IS and a little bit myself, have participated in lunchtime workshops, say at the Society for Neuroscience meeting, the FENS meeting, the World Congress of IBRO, which have been attended by junior scientists, and they speak about somewhat in what they discussed at today's webinar, but also what it takes to write a good scientific paper. This is useful for people in some countries that maybe don't have the best training and the best mentorship. And this is something that we want to foster to actually improve the quality of the papers that comes to both of our journals, because just as I will agree completely, I always agree with Juan, but I will really agree with what he just said, is that we don't like to reject papers. Absolutely not. We want every paper to be accepted, because actually it's in our financial interest to accept more papers in both journals. So we want more and more good papers to publish in our journal. So please send us your good work. Tazia, speaking for the Secretariat, is there anything you would like to say?
Yes, it's just such a joy for the Secretariat to be able to support, IBRO alumni such as James and Angie, and to see their careers prosper so much, and also to support our fabulous journals. We're doing everything we can to increase our visibility and make sure that we are publishing the best neuroscience research possible. So it's been a pleasure to see you all here today, and we hope to see you again and follow the continued success of both our journals and our alumni.
Right, so in closing, first I'd like to thank the panelists, and I most certainly like to thank all of those who took the time out of their busy days to attend this webinar. But I'd like to mention that this is the first in a series of webinars. The next one I think is coming up in 4 or 5 weeks' time. Tazia can tell you the exact date in a moment. That is going to be highlighting the Asia Pacific Regional Committee and the work going on in that region. We will continue the theme for some time of highlighting the work in the variety of regions, but we might expand out into other types of webinars. We're interested in the ideas that all of you have, not only for the webinars, but ideas for IBRO and ideas for the journals, how we can serve you better. That's what we're here for. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to listen and to respond and to foster international neuroscience. So with that, good note. I hope that was a good note. I thank you all again, and you have the wonderful rest of your day, and keep up the good work, and most of all, stay safe. Get your vaccines when they're available. We hope they become available in other parts of the world sooner rather than later, because the health of the world is only as good as the health of everyone. Okay. Thank you so much.